the way.
What's going on, guys? Greek Freak here, and in this video we're going to be talking about the hot start that Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks have been on, and could he become the youngest MVP in NBA history. Now, of course, we all know the youngest MVP being Derrick Rose in that 2011 season, and just spectacular play here. But of course, now we are seeing a young and emerging star in Luka Doncic, of course winning Rookie of the Year and being the youngest European MVP player of all time. So we're definitely having to see what's going to happen here. And of course, his stats averaging around 27 points per game, almost 10 rebounds, 9 assists, 1.3 steals, shooting 81% from the free throw line and 46% from the field. So whenever we look at somebody like this, of course, these numbers alone are good numbers. And of course, whenever we're looking at an MVP caliber player, what are we going to be looking for? Now, of course, one thing is the fact that Dallas Mavericks, while I do believe the fact that many people believe the fact that this team could be a playoff team just due to the addition of Porzingis, and of course, I think the fact that they made pretty good moves as far as in their bench play and trying to be able to make players around these teams. And of course, it's adding up here, as you can see here. Luka Doncic has been on a triple-double tear as of late and has just been being monstrous with his scoring ability and everything that he's been able to do. Now, of course, another thing is I think the fact that in order for him to win this, of course, he's going to has to keep up this type of play. But we also have to see the Dallas Mavericks emerge above, I think, into a home court advantage team. I think if they end up being around the 4th or at least the 5th seed, they have a chance of them winning the MVP, just due to the fact that I don't think many people imagine the fact that it's a home court advantage team. I think the fact that one thing to win MVP is you have to go beyond expectations of what your team was supposed to do a little bit with, of course, great and consistent play throughout the regular season. I think the fact that Luka Doncic, of course, has been able to add on to a lot whenever we look at this. The matchups they've been having so far this year have been just nothing short of spectacular whenever we look at it. Now, of course, as far as things that we can see, we know the fact that Luka Doncic has been able to be inside of the pros at a very young level and a very young age whenever we look at how he's done into the European League, and of course the great season that he did have going into the next upcoming season. Now, of course, whenever we saw the fact of the competing for the Rookie of the Year between him and Trae Young, we knew the fact that Luka Doncic sort of had the advantage due to just the amazing start that he had to it all. He really doesn't seem to be affected as far as the transitions from the European League to the NBA, as we see in many of these cases. So whenever we try to sit here and we look at something that Luka Doncic, and of course adding a player in Porzingis around him, we know now the fact that Luka Doncic is able to play around other great players. And it's not really just a situation of before where it could have been just him being the main ball handler and the situation of him being the main star player that they're building around. They're obviously able to actually emerge together with Porzingis and not really affect each other's game by any means. I think the fact that that is also showing as far as a good case of him being a future star in this league, and of course maybe even a multi-MVP caliber player. And of course, really looking good for the Dallas Mavericks as far as his ability to, of course, facilitate the basketball, as he's definitely been able to improve beyond even his rookie year with stellar passing abilities. And then, of course, being able to even step up to the challenges when it comes to these other opponents that he's facing. As, of course, you may have seen the biggest differential in triple-double between LeBron James's age and Luka Doncic's age. So, of course, these are matchups that we're just loving to see. And, of course, I think the fact that lots of times we do, of course, mistake this with a lot of players as far as expecting instant results, because we get players like Luka Doncic who can come into the league instantly and perform at the highest level. So I think the fact that this is really something that's just great to see whenever we see from Luka Doncic. I think that the Dallas Mavericks definitely made a great decision as far as for their team, trying to build around Luka Doncic. And of course, I think the fact that Porzingis being there has been able to add a lot to this team. Now, of course, whenever we look into this, why do I think the fact that Luka Doncic would be able to be the youngest MVP this year, and why would he be considered it? Now, of course, as we all know, the MVP is something that is granted by the media, and the media does not always pick the best player by all contentions every single year, or at least some of them do not. Whenever we look at things, they do end up, in many cases, not picking directly right for these award-winning types of situations. And we have to understand the difference between just looking at stats and then looking at what, of course, the effect of those stats are. Now, as a situation that I could put up for an example, James Harden ended up making an all-defensive team last season because he was first in steals per game. Now, grantably, yes, steals are definitely a form of defense, but we know the difference between how certain players get steals and how others do. And of course, steals can be a very misleading stat whenever we look at it. It could be a gambling on defensive objectiveness, going for the ball, intercepting passing lanes. And of course, that can lead to getting more steals. But in the other terms of that, you can actually end up in a situation where you're having the opponent get the ball and he gets an easy layup, or it turns into a situation where they have an advantage in numbers going down the court. So whenever we look at something like that, these are where numbers and stats definitely go into different situations. We all know about assist. Is it different whenever you're just feeding the ball and forcing it at the last second in comparison to being able to make the decision in the moment and having time left and the actual best shot is coming off of that pass? So with this, I'm thinking the fact that Luka Doncic's stats are actually very much legitimate as far as how he's playing. I think the fact that the way that he's scoring, the way that he's going about it, is not just a way that he's, of course, stat padding by any means. I think the fact that he's been able to get the ball, I think him getting rebounds as far as the way he's been doing it has been able to help them pass the break, do things such as that. There's not really a sense of him holding onto the ball to the last second and passing out with seconds left, forcing another player to make assist. It's definitely more of a natural assist type of level, and we're seeing the fact that he's been able to perform, of course, tying career highs in his assists, and of course, while that being able to score himself and not really sacrificing his own numbers in that case. I think the fact that right now, MVP wise, he definitely is a person that we have to be looking out at. Now, of course, it is the beginning of the season. There's no reason to really just jump onto the fact that he's instantly the MVP or anything like that, or that anybody else is. So, of course, I definitely want to see as these battles go out, seeing how these players end up in their situation, how we see as far as competition. Of course, I think the fact that Luka Doncic is somebody who steps up highly whenever it comes to facing a big name opponent or another superstar caliber player. So I definitely like to see players like that. I definitely like that personally. And of course, just seeing that is always a big question. Of course, I want to know from you guys, who do you think will win the MVP this year? Do you think the fact that it's Luka Doncic? Do you think it's somebody else? Tell me who you think in the comments below. And as always, of course, tell me why do you think the fact that they're going to be able to be that MVP. And if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure that you guys leave a like and subscribe to become part of the Greek Army today. And as always, this is Sparta.